We'll call the Municipal Impact Fee Study results to order. Come on down. Is it Blanche? Is it Sean? It's
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Tonight, this is the second workshop for the municipal impact fee um, increases. We have Mr. Sean Ocasio here to go over the presentation again. This is pertaining to the extraordinary circumstances. All right, Sean.
I do love y'all's podium because I'm not very tall, so this is nice. For the record, Sean Ocasio, Raftalis Financial Consultants. I am a senior manager there. I've been the project manager working alongside one of our VPs, Henry Thomas, on the municipal impact fee study. As Blanche mentioned, this is the second presentation on the municipal impact fee extraordinary circumstances. This is part of the procedural requirements associated with implementing the impact fees under the extraordinary circumstance provisions of the Florida statute. The presentation tonight is a slightly more streamlined than the one that I did previously because there's some duplication of material there, but it's still going to cover some basics on the impact fees, benefits of having impact fees, legal considerations, the fee proposal itself, and then the extraordinary circumstances associated with the implementation that we're talking about. With respect to impact fees, these are fees that are designed to cover the costs of major capital investment in public facilities. In the case of our study, police facilities, fire facilities, and parks and recreation facilities that provide capacity to serve new development. These fees are paid by new development and redevelopment that results in any increased demand for service or for infrastructure or facility-related capacity. And these fees can be used to then pay for growth-related capital costs or growth-related major equipment or growth-related debt that's on any of those assets for the three departments we're talking about. The benefits of having impact fees. So these fees are important to have in a community because they're an important financing tool. And they also, by having them at an adequate level in your community, it helps mitigate some of the capital costs associated with growth coming into the community and the burden of that growth that it places on your capital facilities that you then have to increase because that growth comes in here. So it's essentially accounting for that growth has to pay a portion of its own way, for the impact that it's making to the community. So this provides an important funding mechanism, again, for expansion-related projects and growth-related projects and debt. And it helps to keep, in the case of municipal impact fees, fees to your residents, your taxpayers lower because it's mitigating some of those growth costs. To the extent you don't have these fees in place, all those costs and related projects would have to be borne by the existing residents. Just a high level on some legal considerations. These fees are governed by the Florida Impact Fee Act. That's part of the statutes, Section 163. It's been amended numerous times in recent years, especially since 2021 up through present year, with some new changes coming into place in January of 2026 even. So this is an area of the statutes that's undergone a number of different changes over the past 5 years. One of those changes relates to implementation of impact fees and limitations on increasing impact fees. What they did in some of the changes in 2021 where if you're going to propose an increase in the impact fees, if it's an increase up to 25% compared to your existing level, that increase has to be phased in evenly over a 2-year period. If it's an increase that's greater than 25% and up to 50%, then that increase has to be phased in evenly over a 4-year period of time. And in a normal standard statutory implementation approach, you would be capped at 50%. So if you have a study that justifies a cost increase of higher than 50%, and you were to implement under the standard statutory approach, you would be capped at only 50%. So the differential there would be lost and borne by your existing residents. So they built into the statute a provision that says if you have extraordinary circumstances, which are then essentially defined by the governing body as a legislative finding, then you can exceed that phasing protocol, that 2 or 4 year phasing plan, and that 50% maximum. Now, there are certain procedural requirements associated with that, which is kind of the point of the meeting tonight. There's two public workshops associated with discussing those circumstances. There's a justified needs study that's required as well, and then there's a certain voting requirement of the governing body. There will be some changes to these provisions per SB 1080. That's what I mentioned a little earlier, that those changes are going to take effect in January. So under the current extraordinary circumstance approach, its existing form, which is what we're operating under presently, there's a demonstrated need study justifying the increases, and then why the need to exceed the phasing plan. Then there's the two public notice workshops, of which this is the second, and then the required vote is a 2/3 vote of the governing body. How it'll be changing going forward is you'll still be able to implement an increase greater than 50%. However, you'd still have to phase that over a 2-year or a 4-year period, and it would require a unanimous vote of the governing body instead of a 2/3 majority there. The other attachment is if you have not increased your fees in over 5 years, then you can't use the extraordinary circumstance provision in your next update cycle. So that, again, that takes place after January. So that's not affecting us in this present implementation, just something to know. In terms of the fee proposal, rather busy schedule here, but it's showing the different categories of land uses: residential single family, residential multifamily, and then various non-residential land uses. The residential fees are applied on a per dwelling unit basis, while the non-residential fees are applied on either a per 1,000 square foot basis or a per room basis in the instance of hotel motel. We have the existing fees here, along with the fully calculated fee and the associated changes. I'll hone in more on the residential fee. It's currently $747 per residential dwelling unit. For a residential single-family home, that would be increasing to $1,116 per dwelling unit. And then for multifamily, it would go from $747 to $892. Respectively, those are increases of about 49% and about 19%. In terms of overall comparability, what you'll see here is just a kind of a regional sampling of other communities and an average for the group. The municipal average from the survey that we did was a fee per dwelling unit of about $418.61. Your current fee is at $747. That would be increasing to $1,116. What I would mention here is, again, it's just a comparison. That's a snapshot in time. What it doesn't indicate is, for some of these other communities, when was the last time they did a fee update? What level of maybe grant funding they had as a part of some of their municipal services? What level of fee implementation did they choose to go with? Maybe there was something calculated higher, but they made a decision to only implement a certain fraction of that. But at least here's a representative comparison of today what other communities are charging per dwelling unit for police impact fees. Switching gears to fire, same structure for this table. We have residential and non-residential. The residential per dwelling unit fee is $708 per dwelling unit. Sorry. That would be increasing to $1,104 per dwelling unit, and for multifamily, that would be increasing to $883 per dwelling unit. Those are increases of about 56% and about 25% for those two. Then we have the non-residential fees, again, applied on either a 1,000 square foot basis or per room basis, with varying degrees of increases ranging from a decrease in institutional and government and hotel motel to increases for a retail category. So it's varying across the land uses there. In terms of the same survey, but for fire, you have your survey average of just around $533, almost $534 per dwelling unit. Existing fire fee is $708. That would be increasing to $1,104 per dwelling unit. Again, just a sample here. One thing I would note is, just like on the police side is you all have quite a lot of capital improvements as a part of your plan, and that's part of the reason why it's increasing materially. You're doing, there's the public safety complex, and on the police side, there's the training facility. On the fire side, there's station number 6 and its associated apparatus. So the other portion of this can be associated with what level of capital investment that community is making in those municipal services. Whereas if you have a community that maybe is not growing as much and is just doing, renewal and replacement type projects, you're just maintenance and rehabilitations, they wouldn't be moving as material on a comparison like this. So just a bit of information there. Moving to Parks and Recreation. This fee is only applied to residential properties, new residential properties, single family and multifamily. Your current fee is $1,060 per dwelling unit. That would be increasing to $1,358 for a single family unit and $1,086 for a multifamily unit. Increases there about 28%, about 2.4% respectively. On this comparison here, you'll see the survey average was about $1,627 per dwelling unit. Your current fee is well below that at about $1,060, and even at the increased level of $1,358, you'd still be below that average. These fees can vary, as you can see on the chart here, a lot more, and it's a function of the level of service that each community is providing, the availability of land and facilities, and what sort of items they're offering to their community. There are places in South Florida that have very marketable and robust recreation facilities, but they also have impact fees of $5,000-$6,000 per dwelling unit. So it can vary. If we layer all those comparisons on top of each other, you'll see that the average for those same surveyed communities is $2,559 average per residential dwelling unit. That would be increasing to $3,578 per dwelling unit. So moving forward to implementation considerations. So like we talked about for the various fee types and fee increases, we're seeing increases of between 19% up to 56%. And on the non-residential side, between 19% and up to 312%. There are some fee categories that were decreasing, like we saw in some of those charts, but overall, their things are increasing and increasing materially. So the maximum estimate for these impact fee levels generally is higher than that 50% cap that we talked about earlier on the statute side. So there's the implementation considerations there. It was either to implement under the standard approach, capping at 50 and implementing over 4 years. The issue there would be that the fees would be under recovering on the capital costs associated with growth, and so your existing residents would have to pick up those costs. Or pursue the increase through a one-time implementation using the extraordinary circumstance provisions. And it was your decision to implement under that approach. That's why we're in the second meeting for this protocol here. So as far as the conditions themselves associated with it, the city has experienced high population growth. The permanent population has increased by almost 22,000 residents, 21,800 residents since 2010. That's an average rate of increase on an annual basis of about 2.8% per year. Just for a little bit of sense of scale there, the state average was approximately 1.5%, so you're growing at a higher rate than the state itself on an average basis. And you have continued population growth is projected for your community, and that population growth is what's necessitating the expansion of your capital facilities, adding Station 6 and adding other facilities and so on to the community, and some of those facilities that are a part of that, there's the police training facility, like we mentioned, the public safety complex, new fire station and related vehicles, park facility expansions and improvements, and so on. The projected growth in the forecast window that we're looking at is about 2.3% per year through 2030, with then projected growth even beyond that of about 2% per year through 2035. So it is, tapering off over those 5-year and 10-year intervals, but still significant growth rate for your community that's necessitating these various projects. So then with that, there's been significant increases in asset acquisition and related construction costs. Just using a couple of examples, for instance, on the police vehicle side, when you look at the cost of bringing a new vehicle into service for the police department, it's based on the capital plan. That's about $65,000 per vehicle, including its service-related equipment. Previously, when we look at your assets, 5+ years ago, similar vehicle would be between $35,000 and $40,000. So the cost side has also increased rather significantly over this short period of time. Also, similarly on the fire side, there's a fire engine in the plan that's about $900,000. Previously, an item like that would have been about $500,000 just 5-6 years ago. So in the past 5 to 6 years, again, because of COVID, supply chain issues, all these other things and factors, costs have increased at a dramatic rate compared to historical trends, and that's had an impact as well here. Also, just the cost to construct facilities. When we look at material costs and the consumer price index, those have increased from 27% in total to over 40% over the past 6 years as well. So you're getting hit on the vehicle side for police and fire, you're getting hit on the construction side, all at a much higher rate of change than what has been in prior historical years, and you're having to then take on those projects because of all the growth that we were talking about in the prior slide. So with that, the other consideration here is, the impact to your existing residents if these fees are not fully implemented under this approach. The standard approach versus the extraordinary circumstance approach that we're talking about. And that what I have here on the slide is what that burden would be to your existing residents if those capital costs are not picked up in the impact fees and paid by growth. They would have to be picked up by your existing residents. So for the police department over that 5-year period of time, that would be about $224,000 of capital projects that would have to be funded from your existing residents instead of being captured in the impact fee and paid from growth. On the fire side, that would be about $300,000 in projects. And on the recreation side, that would be about $178,000 in projects. And I would note that's just from residential growth. So there's also the fees that are paid by non-residential growth. However, that's a little harder to quantify just because it's a little harder to determine how that growth is going to take place and what makeup you're going to have of that. Is it going to be more retail or is it going to be more office space and so on? But suffice it to say that the additional residential capital cost burden would be $702,000 if you were to layer in the capital cost burden from the non-residential fees not being at their full level. Then it would be even higher impact to your existing residents and community. So just in recap again, the main circumstances that are driving this implementation approach are your high population growth historically and your significant population growth in the near term and midterm future. That population growth is necessitating these capital costs for your police department, your fire department, parks and recreation, and those costs are then much higher than they used to be because of all the recent inflation and impacts to construction and asset costs. And then the impact to your residents would be, if these fees are not implemented at their full level, would be a significant dollar amount that would have to come from your existing residents. That $700,000 plus there. With that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Okay. Any questions for Sean?
I just have a quick question, same one I asked last time. Just to confirm, this is not a fee to the current residents. This will be a fee to developers that will most likely be passing their fee on to the new residents, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Anybody from the public wish to speak on?
Albert McKimmey, 3603 Golden Gem Road. Just an observation. When you presented figures just now, you quoted 2.8% of an average increase since 2010 in the population. But what does that really mean? Because if you go back a year, when Jim Hitt was here, he was quoted figures of a maximum 500 homes per year being developed. Yeah. And that perhaps was consistent from 2010 to perhaps 2021. But what we now have over the last 3 years or 4 years is houses 1,000 units a time. So my recollection in the last year, we probably have done 12,000 units. But if you add up 10 years at 500 units, that was only 5,000 units over that large period of time. So what we're looking at today is disproportionate rates in comparison to what's happening. Now, the next question that I have is the impact fees. We suddenly had this huge amount of homes that are under construction. The impact fees, if they're paid at the time the planning consents are applied for, these impact fees are going to do nothing for the residents just now. We're still going to have to fund infrastructure that's currently not satisfactory for what we're doing. And that's, if those impact fees have already been paid, you're not going to be able to take those from the public. And you're not going to be having the same growth over the next 4 or 5 years as we currently have. None of us wants more growth. And we're probably going to see that growth drop radically. So you really got to think another way to deal with this.
Anybody else? All right. Well, that's it for the workshop. We will be back in about 10 minutes. Okay. Thank you.